My gambling addiction has led to huge debts, loss of family, and threats from creditors. Despite constant financial hardship and loneliness, I continue to hope for a better future. However, when my mother needed emergency surgery and ran out of money, I found myself on the brink of despair. My name is Mike, and I am 37 years old, living in a small town in the southern United States, where the sun burns mercilessly and the wind brings the smell of pine trees and grass. My life has not turned out the way I would like it to. From childhood, I was kind and sympathetic, always tried to help people, even when I faced difficulties myself. But there was one weakness that haunted me most of my life: gambling. Every time I sat down at a slot machine or bet on sports, the world around me disappeared, leaving only the hope of a big win. But luck rarely smiled on me, and soon the debts began to grow like a snowball. Creditors called daily, threatened, and some even came in person, reminding me of the need to repay the funds. The house where I lived with my elderly mother was mortgaged to the last brick, and it seemed that there was no way out of this vicious circle. My wife, tired of the constant problems and lack of stability, left a few years ago, taking her daughter with her. This decision was not easy for her, but I understood why she did it. Our lives had become a never-ending struggle for survival, and she just couldn't take it anymore. After she left, I was left alone, having to cope with financial hardship and loneliness. It pained me to think about losing my family, but I tried to hang on, convincing myself that things would get better one day. My days are monotonous. I get out of bed in the morning, hoping that today will be better than yesterday. Every morning begins with thoughts of how to make enough money to pay the bills and feed myself and my mom. The occasional part-time job can make ends meet, but more often than not, that money is spent betting in hopes of making a big score. The excitement pulls me back to gambling, despite all the previous losses. In the evening, I return home, where my mom is waiting for me, the only one who still believes in me and supports me no matter what. We have dinner together, discussing the news and dreaming of a better future. Her support is the only thing that keeps me afloat. Sometimes I think about what our life was like before everything went wrong. Despite all the difficulties, I don't give up hope. I continue to believe that one day my luck will turn around and I will be able to pay off all my debts, regain my respect, and get back in touch with my daughter. This optimism keeps me moving forward despite the harshness of my circumstances. One morning, my mom approached me with an envelope in her hands. Her face expressed anxiety mixed with hope. Inside the envelope was money that she wanted to give me so that I could wish my daughter a happy birthday. I felt guilty, for I realized how difficult it had been for her to raise these funds. My mom never judged me, always supported me, and believed in the best. At that moment, I firmly decided that I would do everything possible to make my daughter happy. However, fate ordered otherwise. Returning home after work, I accidentally bumped into an old acquaintance of mine working as a bookmaker. He was standing outside a small store, smoking a cigarette and watching people passing by. When he saw me, he smiled broadly and waved, inviting me to come closer. "Hey, Mike, long time no see. How are you?" he asked, clapping me on the shoulder. We exchanged a few sentences about the weather and mutual acquaintances before he got down to business. "Listen, I've got a hot insider tip," he whispered conspiratorially, leaning closer. "There's a game tonight, and the outcome is known in advance. You bet a little, you'll make a lot of money. What do you say?" My heart sped up. I had already imagined how easy it would be to solve all my problems if I hit the jackpot. But deep down, I knew it was a bad idea. I tried to object, saying that I didn't have any money to spare, but the acquaintance persisted. "Come on, Mike, this is your chance. Take the money your mom gave you and bet it. You're going to win for sure." My hesitation did not last long. Fear of creditors, the desire to secure a future for my daughter and mother, and the illusion of a quick solution to all my problems overcame my common sense. I took an envelope of money out of my pocket and handed it to my acquaintance. "Okay," I said, feeling my insides clench with fear and excitement at the same time. "I'll bet everything." The acquaintance nodded, wrote down my bet, and left, promising to contact me in the evening with the results. Left alone, I felt myself start to shake. What had I done? How could I risk my mom's last money? But it was too late. I spent the whole evening in suspense, waiting for the phone to ring. Finally, the phone rang. An acquaintance told me that the team I'd bet on had lost. All the money had been lost. The world collapsed before my eyes. I didn't know how to explain what had happened to my mom or what to tell my daughter. Guilt and despair overwhelmed me. The next day, the creditors caught up with me. They came early in the morning when I was still asleep, knocking on the door, yelling, demanding money. I opened the door, hoping I could somehow negotiate, but their mood was serious. They roughly pushed me inside the apartment and started beating me. Each blow hurt all over my body, but the physical pain was insignificant compared to the mental pain. When they were done, one of them leaned over me and hissed, "Deadline is a month. Next time will be worse." They walked away, leaving me lying on the floor in a semi-conscious state. I realized I was in a hopeless situation. All my mistakes and failures had come upon me with incredible force. But the worst was ahead: how to tell my mom the truth. In the hospital, where I was taken after the beating, I lay and thought about my future. The pain from the beating subsided slowly, but inside it was much stronger. Life seemed meaningless. Friends had turned their backs on me. No one wanted to help. Even those who used to be willing to lend a shoulder now avoided me. The phone was silent, the calls stopped, as if everyone had forgotten I existed. The only bright spot was my mother. When she came to check on me, her eyes filled with tears. But instead of reproaching me, she just took my hand and said, "It's going to be all right, son. We'll get through this." Those simple words awakened hope in me. I realized I couldn't go on living like this. No more betting, no more gambling. I had to find a way to make an honest living and pay back my debts. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a purpose worth fighting for. A week later, I was released from hospital. When I returned home, I immediately noticed that my mom's condition had worsened. She looked weaker than usual, and her eyes had lost their usual sparkle. The doctors said she urgently needed surgery, which cost a lot of money. I was once again at an impasse. Where to get such funds? I started calling all my acquaintances, trying to borrow some money, but everyone refused to help. Some said they were in a difficult financial situation themselves. Others simply ignored my calls. I felt that the ground was slipping from under my feet. Each refusal was like a blow to my chest, reinforcing my feeling of helplessness. At night, sitting in the kitchen, I would look at my daughter's picture and cry. Tears rolled down my cheeks, and I didn't try to stop them. It was a moment of utter despair. There seemed to be no way out. How could I allow myself to be in this position? Why couldn't I have dealt with this addiction sooner? The questions swirled around in my head, giving me no peace of mind. I remembered how often I had promised myself that I would change, that I would become a better person. But each time, it was the same thing all over again. Now, looking at my daughter's picture, I realized I couldn't live like this anymore. For their sake, for the sake of mom and daughter, I had to find a way out. The next morning, I went to look for a job. I walked around the city, went to stores, offices, construction companies. Everywhere I was rejected. No one wanted to hire a person with such a reputation. Tired and disappointed, I was walking home when suddenly I noticed a familiar figure. It was Tom, my close childhood friend with whom we had an almost fraternal relationship, but who had moved out of the neighborhood and I hadn't seen him in years. Tom was successful and owned a small business. He came up to me, asked how I was doing, and after hearing about my plight, offered me a job. "You want to work for me?" Tom said. "We'll start small, but I'm sure you'll do fine. The main thing is to be responsible and honest." I agreed without hesitation. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a chance to start over. Tom didn't ask about my past mistakes. He just reached out, and I was grateful for that. The first weeks at the new job were tough. Having gotten used to the easy money that could be won on bets, I now had to learn patience and perseverance. The work was routine, and at first I thought I would never get the hang of it. But every day it became easier, and I started to enjoy what I was doing. Gradually, I began to realize that real success comes through hard work and effort, not luck. Tom was supportive, offered advice, and helped me adapt. I saw how much he valued conscientious employees, and I tried to live up to his expectations. The job became not only a way for me to earn money, but also an opportunity to prove to myself that I was capable of more. I had to go to Tom and borrow money for my mom's surgery from him. He did not refuse me, even though I was well aware that I was asking for a lot. The money was handed over quickly, with no questions asked and no conditions attached. Mom was immediately taken to the clinic, and the doctors started preparing the surgery. The doctor who performed the surgery later told me that the intervention was successful, but we barely made it. A little more delay, and the consequences could have been irreversible. Those words made me think about how close I was to losing the dearest person in my life. If not for Tom's help and the timeliness of the doctors, things could have turned out very differently. After the surgery, my mom began to slowly recover. Her eyes were filling with life again, and she was slowly returning to her normal state. Seeing her recover was a miracle for me. I realized that I owed it all to Tom, and I swore to myself that I would pay him back, no matter how big the debt was. A year passed. I paid off my debts in full and even managed to save a small amount of money. My relationship with my daughter improved, and we started spending more time together. Our meetings stopped being infrequent and formal, and we started socializing as real friends. One evening, on the eve of my daughter's birthday, I invited her to a cafe. We chose a cozy place where pleasant music was playing and freshly brewed coffee was smelling. Sitting at the table, we laughed and talked about everything in the world. She told me about her school friend, her favorite books and movies, and I shared my plans for the future. I gave her a beautiful bracelet that she had wanted for a long time, and her eyes shone with happiness. As we left the cafe, I looked up at the sky. The stars were shining brightly, as if promising me a better future. In that moment, I realized that there were still many challenges ahead, but now I had what really mattered, a family and the hope of a new life. I felt that I had finally found my place in the world, and nothing could mar that moment.